And you're listening to and watching the Hopkinton Hangout Hour on HCAM. Thank you for joining us on this Monday afternoon. I don't know if it's raining out there. I'm down in my basement. Is it raining outside?
Not where I am.
Okay. All right. So I hope that doesn't impact our audience. It's just nice weather.
You mean you're concerned the rain will keep them inside and watching instead of outside and not watching?
You know, it sounds so much worse when you say it, Bob.
Yeah, thank you. It's a gift.
All right. Well, to our viewers, we originally had some representatives from the Chamber of Commerce scheduled. However, they had to postpone their appearance because one of them was able to get some type of appointment. And we always say that family comes first. And we hope that we'll get them scheduled soon. We're shooting for next week, and I'm sure something will work out.
I was looking forward to talking to them about the Chamber of Commerce. Maybe they would have some comments on the governor's comments this morning at around 11:30 when he started talking about phase 1 opening, phase 2 opening, phase 3 opening, etc., and what kind of businesses are going to be impacted by that.
Yes, I was thinking that too. And at the same time, I was also wondering if they would have had enough chance to really go through that and have some good commentary on that. So one of the silver linings of our delay will be they'll have much more time to comment intelligently on how that's going to affect our business community here in Hopkinton.
Right. But sometimes first reactions to the things that weren't said would be a clue as to how long it's going to take for certain groups or businesses to open. I didn't hear anything about town meetings. I know tonight we have a planning board meeting still scheduled on Zoom, and tomorrow night we have the select board meeting. So I'm assuming that'll still be on Zoom. Hopefully in another week, we'll be able to start having government meetings in government buildings.
Yes. However, I do think that when they talk about businesses opening, they're talking about at a 25% capacity, and they're talking about the restrictions and the social distancing that still have to be in place. So there's a lot to do there. You know, I thought it was really interesting when Governor Baker was talking. He was talking about masks or social distancing. Did you catch that? He was saying, if you can't stay 6 feet apart, then you have to wear a mask. And it sounded to me, it was like, if you can be 6 feet apart, then you don't have to wear a mask. But I don't know about that. I haven't heard anything. That was just kind of like the first time I had heard those two talked about in that way. So I'll be interested to see what the outcome of that is.
I think in the original, whatever you want to call it, proclamation, it was when they first said that anyone outside will have to wear a mask. That phrase was included in that edict that if you can't provide social distancing, you must wear a mask. Now, there are plenty of businesses that were open, that were considered essential, that were demanding that if you come in, you should wear a mask or you have to wear a mask. And that phrase, social distancing without a mask, if you can be 6 feet away, you can go without a mask. I see plenty of runners and joggers and bicyclers out there that aren't wearing masks, and I assume that that's not a problem for them.
Actually, I think that maybe not for them if they don't have COVID or if they already do and they don't know about it, but it definitely could be a problem for those behind them. Have you seen the graphic where they have like people running around on bikes and they just have these droplets, they have this cloud coming out behind them? Because what I have to find out more about this too for our own situation. 6 feet has been around for a very long time. And after 6 feet came out, there was talk about 28 feet. And my understanding was the difference between that was the size of the droplets. That the droplets, when it was discovered that it could be carried on just normal breathing, then they were saying 28 feet. And there was another thing, and I can't remember the exact percentages, but they did these tests where if one person had COVID and another person didn't, And if the person wearing COVID had COVID wore a mask, that would decrease the chance of a transmission. If the person who didn't have COVID wore a mask, that would decrease a different percentage. And if both people were wearing masks, it decreased it very severely. I don't remember what the number was, but it was a lot lower than just either one of them wearing a mask. So, and it also was, we were talking about in one of the earlier shows that there was a study that showed they traced some people who it was found that they got COVID-19, the virus, in a restaurant, and somebody else had it, and they did not come in contact with those other people. So it went through the AC, went through the return air, and came back into the room, and they got it that way. And so with those things in mind, I need to try to understand more what 6 feet means and what masks and 6 feet, and they talk about 28 feet, what that means. I'm really confused.
Well, and as I said this morning when I heard him speaking, that they often referred you to their website, and from what I've heard, there's over 25 pages on the website about the particulars for each one. So it's going to take somebody a while to go through that website and come up with whatever the requirements are for their particular business. And as in any case, there are going to be people that are happy about it and people that aren't happy about it. But what I've always wondered is, even though they tell me I can go to a restaurant and sit in a restaurant that's only 25% occupied, if I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to go there, whether I have a mask or not a mask.
Right. Yeah. And that, they talk about that a lot. And Governor Baker was saying that he hoped that it was very clear that the vulnerable populations who have underlying things going on, the best thing to do is to stay home. And the more that people can do that, the better this is going to be. I'm kind of surprised, although not really, but Massachusetts is one of the top 4 or 5 states for being a hotspot. New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, and I don't remember what the other 2 that he said. And so we're a hotspot, and yet, from what I've been seeing, the healthcare system has not been strained to the breaking point. And they keep saying how that is because people have been doing what they need to do. They have been staying home. People have been socially distancing. People have been wearing masks. And that's a great thing. I think we're going to have Bob Dubinsky on next week again, giving us another report from Boston in the center that he is in. And the DCU center, they outfitted that. But my understanding is that it was not activated. And I think that is just wonderful. I would much rather see that they, wasted a couple $1 million preparing for something that we have no idea what it's going to be, but it could be really bad. So you prepare for it. And it turns out that we didn't need it. But imagine the reverse of that. Imagine if we said, well, maybe it won't be that bad, and we don't prepare for it, and then we ended up needing it.
Yeah. But I think that maybe something that wasn't taken into consideration was what I believe is the fact that it turned out a lot of people that would normally go to the hospital decided to forego that visit and haven't gone for other things other than COVID-19. And maybe that allowed the hospital to put so much staff and so much effort into taking care of COVID-19 patients without the distraction of other patients, that it gave them opportunity to get a foothold on the situation and move forward. Because I see now that hospitals are starting to ask people to come back for their other purposes to the hospital that normally they'd put off.
Yeah, I've been to a hospital in the past month or so, and it was a really scary experience. The way that they're like, they have the desk with the big plastic, and don't come here yet. Now we're going to come out to you. We're going to ask you some questions. We're going to make sure you have a mask on, send you this way, send you that way. Don't go anywhere else. It's, it's very strict. And I had heard that too, that a lot of people were not going. And so there's extra capacity there, but I don't know anything about if they were using that extra capacity and converting it into COVID ready operations in anticipation of something.
Well, one of my concerns that I've noticed over the last week anyway is that it seems to me as the COVID-19 patient admission to hospitals goes down, hospitals are starting to furlough some of their staff. They're starting to cut back on the staff. I've heard that, for example, down at Cape Cod Hospital, they supposedly furloughed a lot of nurses or support staff because of the lack of patients coming in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what? That's going to be, I think that is going to be the big answer that has to be questioned, that has to be answered, is how do we handle this? Because if we shut down the economy and that is it, it would be ruinous. It would be ruinous in so many different dimensions, from the food that we need to get to healthcare that we need and things like that. However, these they're going to come back, and who knows at what schedule, at what rate. So you have one aspect, one end of the spectrum where everything is shut down until there's a vaccine and we make sure everything is safe, and then livelihoods are gone. On the other end of the spectrum, we just open everything up and we get back to living the way that we used to be, and we anticipate more cases that way. I think that is a huge spectrum, and I was really interested to hear how Governor Baker and that council that they put together are weighing all of those things. They kept talking about balancing and about weighing, and I thought that was a really good approach to look at it.
Well, there has been a big ripple effect caused by that, all these businesses shutting down, all these people being sick and dying, and it's going to take some time for them to come back. And the real question is, whether they really will come back or not. And when you see places like New Hampshire, north of us, and Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, south of us, opening up, and if travel starts, the people on the Cape, I think, are going to have a real bad summer if we don't get things going pretty quickly.
I know. Did you hear about that? I think it was Norway, but I am not sure. The way that they handled that, like this coming closure of businesses, was they went to, businesses could apply, and basically the government would be paying unemployment benefits through businesses. So the government was telling businesses, look, you don't need all your employees now. Don't fire them. Keep them employed, and we will give the unemployment benefits through you that they would get. So their unemployment rate did not spike like it did here, because the companies didn't furlough or lay off their people. They went with this other government program, which I don't know. I mean, I don't monitor this stuff. I'm not a reporter. I don't look at this for a living, but that sounds like a pretty cool idea.
I don't know how Norway does it, but they must have enough money around to do it.
Yeah, they have strong social programs up in Northern Europe. It's pretty good from what I hear. But one of the things I heard in Massachusetts is doing is a lot of companies are getting small business loans. Like my younger brother actually got a raise from his boss because he was able to get one, or a bonus, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the owner of the Spoon in town. She's extended family, and she got a loan, and they were able to bring back some of their employees to do the takeout that they're doing. And the encouragement for that was, I don't know if this was I imagine this was just a state program. because if they use a certain amount of the money from the loan on employees to bring employees back to work, they don't have to repay it.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing about it.
That's a really good incentive.
Yeah. And Bob, but going back to what you were saying, you don't know how they have, how Norway can afford that. You know what? Do you think that the United States of America can't afford whatever it needs to afford? Right. And I know, believe me, I don't like the federal deficit. And if I was running the world, I would have different priorities and other people have. And everybody thinks that, and everybody is right, that there are ways in which the government is wasteful and there are ways in which the government is helpful. And, that's where much argument comes from. However, when it comes to something like this, which is so big and has the potential for such devastation, there is no amount of money that this government can't come up with in order to make it work. How many trillions of dollars have they spent already? And part of that was for this extra $600 a week in unemployment benefits, right? I don't know how much money went to that, but the money is not going to be the issue. Politics, arguing about the money will be an issue.
If you recall, the federal government put $1 trillion into the stock market, into Wall Street, just as this all began, to try to boost stocks, and it didn't work. There was no discussion about where this money was coming from. It's a gigantic, it's an unfathomable amount of money that was just spent in a moment.
Was it $1 trillion? I thought that the Fed had like 3 to 5 trillion that they to do.
Maybe. It would that sounds more correct if I remember correctly. It was over 2 months.
So, does anybody have any idea what 350 million Americans divided into $5 trillion amounts to per person? Those numbers boggle me. But
it's about 10,000, I think,
okay, and that includes. So I mean, and that
maybe
includes.
I'm not carrying a zero.
All right,
but
so, you know what I mean. The money is not the issue. The problem is there's so much money, and then you start getting into people who want certain things and not other things, and that I think is where the problem is.
Well, one of the, I suppose, and I'll just take it as a counterpoint, that do you think that Harvard University needed a $9 million grant for it?
Absolutely not.
Well,
they did end up getting publicly shamed into returning that money. Even I can't believe they would go for it. And once it first came out, I can't believe that somebody didn't say, gee, you're right, we actually shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Well, don't you think that that's the whole point, that at least historically, once the federal government says we have a bucket of money, everybody's going to want a piece of that bucket.
Yeah.
Then you have to sort it out later. And no matter who you say is entitled to it, somebody else is going to feel slighted that, well, why didn't we get it? After all, it's our money. It's tax money.
That is the truth, right? That is the truth. And one of the big problems with this last go round, this last tranche of money that they put out there, were corporations who had no need, and it was not intended for it, were soaking up tens of millions of dollars. And even look back at the 2008 recession that happened. I personally, my opinion, I think looking back on it, hindsight is best. That could have been done a lot better. The government, the Obama administration bailed out the car industry. They saved Wall Street. They picked which gigantic firms would get these lifelines and would be saved. You know what? I don't think that was right. I think that amount of money going into the pockets of the people who were laid off, because when they give that money to the bank and they say to the bank, hey, listen, don't worry, you're not going to go under. Here's your money. I think the expectation is the bank is going to go to all their mortgagees and say, we understand and they didn't, and they foreclosed on so many homes. So now they get a lifeline, and they're foreclosing on people who have regular everyday mortgages. If they gave that money to the people would have paid their mortgage. The bank would have gotten it anyways, but
Yeah.
the people would have been able to stay in their homes.
Well, now that we have everything straightened out, maybe we'll bring Valerie in so
Oh
she
my
can talk
gosh.
to us.
Is she waiting?
She's in the room. If would you like me to bring her in?
Yeah, and no more talking politics.
Exactly.
Yeah, this could have gotten ugly.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't like debate.
No,
Maybe
we're all
she's a-
nice people.
Maybe
Well,
Valerie's afraid to come in now because she heard us talking politics, and we'll have to stay away from that. She's connecting to audio right now.
okay. All right, Matt, take it away.
All right. So hi, Valerie. If you can hear us, we're gonna be talking with the high school drama teacher, Valerie von Rosenvinge. And if you can hear us, Valerie, you just need to turn on your video and
There it is.
hi, we can see you now, but you're still muted. There you go.
No, nope, she's fine.
There you go. Hi, Valerie. Good to see you.
Too bright back there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can do this. Is that better? Not much?
Yeah, I think it's
It's
better.
good enough.
I mean,
It's good.
it's like this is where I teach on my
There we go. Just tilt down slightly. Perfect.
Awesome.
See, she's a pro.
Yeah.
What'd you say? I didn't catch that.
I'm trusting you to make me look good.
All right. You look awesome.
Thank you. I feel
So,
pretty-
Valerie, thank you so much for joining us. I had the thought a few weeks ago. I was like, you would be a perfect guest to ask on here.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you think I'm perfect, Matthew.
Oh yeah, of course.
We go way back, you and me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's weird to say that because it sometimes feel like it hasn't been that long, but it really has.
Oh my gosh, I remember your
I
first
started high school in
show
2008.
was Beauty and the Beast, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
At the high
Oh
school?
yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I actually found the script from that in one of the extra rooms in my house recently.
Did you really? I just
Mhm.
had Jim make me a video of it, and I didn't get through the whole thing, but I was like, wow, they were really good.
It was good.
It was a very good production. Yes, one of the ones I'm more proud of.
Yeah. I don't think any of the productions that I've ever seen you put on were not good.
Thank you. But I think some of them were just a little bit more like, let me put it this way. I didn't expect I was able to do it. And then I sat there. It was kind of like when we did Les Mis.
Oh yeah.
I remember the very last show, I basically said to everybody, do not bother me. I am just going to watch this. I don't want to hear from anyone. Like something goes wrong, fix it. And I just sat there like this going, I cannot believe we did this. I just couldn't believe we had pulled it off. So
Yeah, that one was fantastic.
yeah, it was really
I think I saw that one twice actually, because I was just coming home from my freshman year of college, first semester for Thanksgiving.
right. And of course, your very good friend Alex Hershey was in it. So
Oh yeah, a lot of my really good friends.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It was good. So what can I entertain you with today? Anything in particular?
Well, I know you want to talk about a new book that you have,
true.
but before we get to that, I would just love to catch up with you a little bit.
Okay.
So, Valerie, can you tell us how is this whole situation? How is this affecting you?
Well,
there anything
I'll tell
notable?
you, the thing that was probably the most difficult was that we were scheduled to open our show
Mhm.
on Thursday, the 14th of March. And I had Craig kind of breezed into my office. Or no, that's not true. Tuesday morning, Evan said to me, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but, they're monitoring these cases in the area. He said, but I wouldn't worry about it. And so I had a really uneasy feeling about it. And I said to my students on Tuesday before they left, I go, look, I said, I have a really good intuitive sense here. So if you want to invite anyone you want to come and see the show, our final dress rehearsal on Wednesday, I would suggest they come because I have this awful feeling. I just have this awful feeling. And then, of course, we got the call that night. and they couldn't even do that. So,
Nice.
Initially Evan and I were talking about trying to get them in there to film it. And then, it just, so it started out with my being heartbroken. Not for me. I mean, these kids had worked so hard.
Yes.
And you know how it is. You've been in productions, and yes, the process is a really important thing, and there is stuff to be kind of taken away from that will stay with them forever. But that performance piece and having people, their family and their friends, and even people they don't know, celebrate their work wasn't going to happen. And so I started off being in a really down place because of that.
Yeah, of course. I can't even imagine what those kids must have thought, especially the seniors.
I know.
And at the high school, there's plenty of posters for the senior athletes who didn't get their seasons in the spring.
Right.
But a lot of those seniors in theater, I know a lot of them aren't going to be doing this in college.
That's right.
It was going to be a lot of their shows, and I was fortunate in college to have a lot of clubs that I could work on. So I kept doing theater in
Did
college.
you really? I guess I knew that.
Consistently.
Yeah.
I was part of 2 clubs, actually.
What's your favorite thing that you did in college?
That would be a tie. I was in a Shakespeare club, so I did a lot of Shakespeare.
Oh, I love Shakespeare.
We did my final show with them my junior year was Macbeth, which was an amazing production, and I played Banquo.
Wow.
That was probably the best show I was in, but my favorite show was the previous semester when we did A Winter's Tale, and I played Florizel.
I love that.
Yeah, that was such a fun show.
Yeah. So in high school, what was your favorite production that you were ever?
A bit of a recurring theme. I think it was Much Ado About Nothing. I just remember looking back so much on that one.
Yeah. And of course, coming off of Scotland. I mean, going to do the Fringe with you guys, because I never did it again. I tried to mount it twice, and I just didn't have the same level of enthusiasm. Not only from students. I mean, we had like 30 students.
Yeah, we had a huge group.
We had 26 cast, 6 crew, and 5 adult chaperones that came. I couldn't get the other chaperones. I couldn't get the student numbers. It just wasn't. So it was a very unique kind of moment in my history when I had all of you together at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so I will always kind of, as much as I value the relationships I've had with all of my drama students, and they've all been very unique, and the experiences have been, individually exceptional in terms of mounting each show. I'll never forget that. I'll just never forget going to Scotland. And you were one of the Wackadoo 9, weren't you?
Yes, I was. That whole thing. Okay.
Explain to the audience what the Wackadoo 9 did and put me over.
All right, so this is a nice attempt, Valerie, at interviewing Matt, but actually we're here interviewing you. So I'm curious to have you answer the question that you asked Matt. What was the favorite thing you did in high school and the favorite thing you did in college?
Okay, so you got to understand that my undergraduate degree was in political philosophy. So I didn't do theater. I built sets. Like I used to go and be the person. I loved heights. And so I'd be the person that was up in the grid, like hanging the porch swing, that sort of thing. So I didn't do theater in college. I did a lot of community theater when I didn't discover theater really until I was in my 30s. So my favorite thing that I ever did there were 2 things. One was being the dance captain for the show Kiss Me Kate, just because there were 9 totally different dances, and I just met this fabulous group of people. Not that I particularly liked the show, but the dancing was wonderful. And I also, the last role I did was I played Malin in Steel Magnolias, and that was in 2000 and, I don't know, Matt, it's whenever we did Music Man.
Yeah, that was 2009. I remember that.
Remember? And you guys all came, and it was lovely. But
yeah.
I was in rehearsals 3 nights a week from 7 until 10. And then our show went up, and we closed on a Sunday afternoon, and I had tech week the following week, and I opened that following Thursday. I had a Thursday night show, Friday night show, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night show, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night show. I've never been so wiped out in my entire life, and I just decided I can never do this again. I can't do it. In terms of directing, like at school, I mean, Les Mis certainly is up there, but I got to tell you, it's when I took these kids to Scotland, because we wrote a play. They did all of these. They took all these little vignette stories, and I kind of put it together into this one story, and they just bought into it so beautifully. And I think that led also to was it the next year that we did Uncommon Nonsense? I can't remember.
No, that was the year after that.
Right. And so it led into the kind of desire to write something. And so 2 years later, we did a show called Uncommon Nonsense. It was entirely student written, that I think was brilliant. So that was one of the bravest things I did, was to say to a bunch of students, okay, go. Mm. And I did very little. I just kind of guided them, because we had a lot of brilliant writers that year.
You did.
We really did. It kind of came on board to work on it. So, but I mean, I love them all. I really do. Each time I sit there and watch them, and I think, I can't believe that I'm a part of this. Because the kids are so committed and so humble. I very rarely have had a kid that's, got a real ego problem. And that's rare in high school drama. It really is. You got a lot of divas out there, and you have a lot of divas that are theater too. It's kind of like when we were in Scotland, I went on my own. I've been on my own 2 other times. And you meet these theater teachers that from high school, they take themselves so seriously. It's like, oh, well, we're going to do Commedia dell'arte and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just looking at them saying, oh my God, we teach high school. Like, can we not take ourselves that seriously? But that's, I think, why we had, going back to the thing in Scotland, I think that's why we had so much fun, was because we were in it together. There was no competitiveness to it. And I think everyone that was on that trip, adults included, realized how incredibly special it was. This was not your average, let's take a group of kids overseas for a week. Mm-hmm. This was the culmination of over a year of hard work, of them earning money, of getting the word out there, of perfecting this piece, where everybody, all 26 people, I truly believe, felt that they were a part of an ensemble, and it wasn't all about one over another, right? I mean, I think that's true.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Yeah. So that I think, of all of the things I did at Hopkinton High School, will stand out as being the most unique. I'll put it that way.
It's actually because of that. It's actually because of that trip that I was able to get into the Shakespeare Club I was a part of in school, because my first semester of college, I did a musical theater club. It was called Harlequin.
Right.
And they do a review every fall. And then in the spring they do a musical, and I was going to audition for that, but that show always goes up the week after spring break. So the people in that show couldn't go home for spring break. And I didn't have the best freshman year. Right. I always just wanted to come home. So I didn't do that show.
Right.
And the Shakespeare Club was putting on The Tempest. So I was like, well, I still want to do theater. Yeah, it's a great show. So I'll audition for that. And it was the first time I ever did a show that had cuts in the cast. So I just wanted any part at all. And I went and auditioned, and the director was a student. His name was Tyler. And he was looking at my audition sheet. And he was like, what does it mean you've done a workshop at the Globe? And I was like, oh, at the Globe Theater in London. I did a workshop there a few years ago for a high school trip. He was like, you went to the Globe in London, Shakespeare's theater? And I was like, yeah. And I think that's what got me cast.
Good. I'm so glad. It worked for you.
Yeah, and that turned out to be like my favorite club throughout the rest of my years of college.
You never know. Yeah. So, anyways, going back to the whole the teaching online is very challenging for me, because I'm very maternal in my behavior with my students in that I feel like I'm kind of watching out for them. And the way that I teach is really catering the information I'm trying to get to them to fit their needs. I can't get from them what they need from me online. You know, even a lot of them will ask for one-on-one conversations, and I'll do that, but I still don't feel it's not the same. And so I feel as though the greatest part of my teaching isn't being kind of utilized or experienced by the students. And so that makes me sad. And
Now, your class is public speaking, right?
right. So my largest group is public speaking. And luckily we had gotten into the semester. So I'd given them the basic framework of what they needed to do. And so I had to, you know, obviously it's a performance class. So I had to adjust it, but I decided to focus on other things that I thought, I mean, obviously they were still speaking, but like how to put together a media presentation, you know, like the rules and between you and me, and I'm sure you know this, 95% of the people, even professionals who come to our school, have no idea how to do it. So I spent a lot of time with them doing that. And then instead of them performing it, I said, just write down what you would be saying in the speaker notes so then I can look at it. You know, so it's not the experience that they would be having with me in the classroom up on the stage with the lights and the clicker and, you know, all of that. But it's something that I think that they can take with them from the past 2 months or 3 months that I guess for the seniors, I mean, for the juniors and under and below that will have me until June 18th. That will be meaningful for them. But I feel bad. I feel like they've been cheated. I think they should be able to take it again.
You know, it's interesting I say that because I was really interested about this conversation. After speaking with you on Highlights from the Hill, so much of what you teach is not the curriculum. So much of what you teach is just personal centeredness, confidence, growth, that of all of their teachers, I would think that they are still getting the most of your original experience because it has to be a lot of words and emotion.
Yeah, no. I do talk to them, but I can't cater it to the individual, Jim, like I usually am able to do. Like if they're writing a speech in the auditorium, they're scattered all over. I'll go sit down next to somebody and it's not only what are you writing, but so what's going on with you? How was that, you know, hockey game? Or, you know, how did tryouts go for this? I mean, and that's how I kind of tease out from them what I think they genuinely need from me as a human being to help them. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I know what you mean. You're like dad, right? Because I mean,
so that part is missing.
I get most of my knowledge from my dad when we're working on a project together and stuff just comes out.
Right. So that's the part of it that I miss. I don't miss although I'm still getting up at 5 a.m. I can't I don't know. Well, plus it's May and I'm always up at 5 in May. I mean, I think if it was December, I would be like, oh my God, I can sleep in until like 7:30. I'd be very happy. But I've also been, you know, doing a lot of work on my book. And so that's kind of kept me engaged and not feeling, not focusing on things that I'm missing, which I never think is a good idea. You know, I'm actually on, I don't know whether you'll get to see the Senior Transition Day video, but I give a speech in it. And I talk about how I think that kids have to learn how to do nothing. And I can anticipate their response as immediately as I say it. They're going to be thinking, hey, that's all I've been doing for the past 2 months is nothing. And the thing is, if you're sitting there feeling depressed or cheated or betrayed or sad or, you know, whatever, you're doing something. Like that's not doing nothing. Like you need to learn how to control those thoughts so those thoughts don't control you. And so I've had to practice that myself. Do you know what I mean? Like I am really enjoying the fact that I can get up every morning and take a walk for an hour. I don't get to do that during the school year, right?
Right.
I'm enjoying the fact that everything is slowed down. There's no racing to get anywhere. It's at a slow pace. And I think that that's a much more civilized way to live. You know, So, I mean, there are things that are really wonderful about it. I'm spending my daughter and son-in-law are both working from home. And so I have no contact with anyone, except my neighbor across the street who's been editing my book. And she and I have outdoor sessions, 6 feet apart and all that. But that allows me to go over and take care of my granddaughter. So that they can work. So I'm spending, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day with my 2.5-year-old. And I would never have that opportunity, So there are a lot of things that I'm getting out of this experience that I have to kind of shift my attention to and really appreciate, so that I'm not in that sense of what's not happening, which is where the trap lies, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially for these young people. I mean, they've been looking forward to these things their whole lives, but and so my heart breaks for them, but I also know, like, I really don't remember my prom, and I don't really remember, I mean, I remember my friends, I still see them. But if you ask me, like, where was our prom? It's like, I have no idea. Like, whose house did we go to before for dinner? Like, I don't know.
I know. But
People.
it's so true. It's where they're at. When we have the high school graduations and the kids give their speeches, that's not the speech that you would give if you were giving it,
Right.
And it always strikes me, especially there, this is where they're at.
Yeah.
And that these things are as important to them as us perhaps losing our jobs,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do recognize that. I often, I mean, there are all these things I do in the course of teaching, but one of the things is that I explained to them, I said, you got to understand, people, I'm up here talking to you as somebody who's 61 years old. If I had 17-year-old Valerie sitting next to me, she would look at me like I was a crazy person.
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying to you has come out of, my years of experience and living and working through disappointments and recognizing inner strength that I never knew I had. I'm just trying to share that with you, not because I expect you to, like, walk out of here and be transformed, but because I just want you to understand that it changes, that everything is fluid. And so you've got to keep yourself open to recognize and appreciate when those new things are kind of drifting into your life. Do you know what I mean? So you can take advantage of them and allow them to allow yourself to grow. Because if you stop growing, you stop evolving, what's the point? I mean, seriously, I don't know what the point is. So I'm trying to look at this as a positive. I am looking at it. I mean, I am. That's kind of the way I am. So I had a few bad days, but
yeah. So I said I wanted to get this, and you mentioned your book a few times, Valerie. You want to tell us about that?
Wait, make a noise, Valerie. We can't see you. We can't see you unless you make a noise.
Beyond the Stones, The Promise of Beatrice. It will be out by probably by the beginning of June. And I went back to Edinburgh by myself the summer of 2014. And I had a day that I was just alone. And I wasn't going to see any shows or anything. I was just going to walk around the old city and just kind of sit down and get a feel for the energy of the place, because it's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I found this tiny little garden off the beaten path. I wasn't looking for it. I just saw this little alleyway and I walked out. All of a sudden I was in this garden, this huge, not huge, but, unexpectedly bigger than I thought it would be. And I sat there by myself. I was the only person in there. It was early in the morning. I was the only person in there. And there was this fabulous stone wall. And all of a sudden I had this vision of an old woman standing at the wall. And I had my notebook with me. And, Matt knows, I mean, I've written plays and I used to write music and, writing is just kind of the thing that I do when I'm by myself and trying to work through things. I just write. So I wrote this thing. And I kept thinking about it and I thought, my God, there's a whole story here. There's like this book. But I didn't really actually start to write the book until the summer of 2017 for a whole lot of reasons. And bizarrely enough, the only place I could write it was this small village in Tuscany, which was, I know, unfortunate.
Unfortunate.
No, because it was expensive. I knew that I had to get away from here to write the book. So Charlotte Shire, in her incredible generosity, and because the universe tends to hand me things when I need them, walked into my in the auditorium in like middle of January of 2017, and one of the teacher that was supposed to go on a field trip with her during the summer had backed out. And I had just recently said to people, I'm going to have to go away to write this book. I just can't get it to come out. And they were saying, where are you going to go? And I said, I don't know. Maybe I'll go to Scotland. Maybe I'll go to Denmark because my family's from Denmark. Maybe, I don't know, but I have this feeling I'm going to go to Tuscany. And they were like, well, where does the book take place? I go Scotland. And they go, well, don't you think that's where you should go? I go, I don't know. It's just going to appear to me. So she comes in literally a week later and says, do you want to go on this? No, she didn't even ask me if I wanted to go. She starts telling me that Devin has dropped out. And I knew that she led these trips. And I was at that point drawing tarot cards every morning. So I looked at her. I said, I'll go. She said, Valerie, you don't know where we're going. I said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I drew the Empress card this morning. I'll go. This is a good sign. She goes, you don't even know when we're going. Doesn't matter. I'll go. And so it turned out that it was the first 2 weeks in July. And we were going to basically be in Italy, end up in Milan. And I said, that's really interesting because I had this vision. I was going to be in Tuscany this summer. And she said, well, I'll bring them back. You can stay.
Ooh.
So all of a sudden, all I had to do was pay $100 to change my airfare. And I stayed for another 5 weeks. And I found this tiny apartment in this tiny village with 137 people that, again, I have no idea how I found it. It's just I kept being drawn to it. Met 3 phenomenal people that basically were there for me in terms of helping me get my groceries. I lived in an apartment, tiny apartment. I had a table, writing table that looked out over olive groves and grazing sheep and an ancient village, like, I don't know, like 3/4 of a mile away with a bell that tolled. I mean, it was the most idyllic thing. And so by the time I got there, I had like a little over 3 weeks. And the story just started to pour out of me. And I thought, great, came home, could not write it. Had to go back. So I went back the next summer. Another 3+ weeks. That one I paid for. And then I went back a year ago, this past April, for a week. And I hadn't finished it. But the thing was, the story would only really flow when I was there. So finally, on my last day, I'm looking up saying, okay, look, I can't afford this. So you need to tell me what happens. Tell me how the book ends, because I don't know how the book ends. And so I started writing down all these ideas, 4 hours, and I came home and I was finally able to write it. So I think I finished it, the first draft, this maybe a year ago. And it's taken me a full year to edit it. I mean, to really properly edit it. Mm-hmm. So that's where the work is. That's really where the work is.
Is amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. And Linnea Byers, Pappas Byers, I'm sorry, Linnea, right? I get her name always confused. She did the cover. Yeah, Linnea Pappas Byers. She painted, she read the book. She's a brilliant artist, and she's a senior graduating. And I said to her, I really want a part of my teaching life to be on this. I want, and I said, I love how you paint. I said, would you mind reading the book and paint me a cover? And so she did. So, there's a little bit of my students on it. And so it's the first in a trilogy. And I've never had such a drive to know I had to finish something like this. So
a trilogy.
I'm really proud of it.
That's going to be a lot of time in Tuscany.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't know where but no, I think I'm going to go. I was supposed to go to Scotland this summer for 2.5 weeks, and I had to cancel the trip. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going to start writing the next one, but anyways, I'm very proud of it. So Matthew, thank you for asking.
Oh, absolutely.
You
So
should.
can you give us like a sentence or two about what the book is about?
Okay, well, it started with my idea that not only is there personal karma, but there's universal karma. So we think of karma as whatever I put into the universe, I'm going to get back. And I began to think of our planet is just is one element in the universe. And if we're putting out a lot of fear and hatred and negative energy into the universe by virtue of how we're treating each other and how we're treating our planet, that the universe isn't going to have any use for us. So I came up with this story that tells of people that are connected to each other all over the world, but are also connected to the earth through ancient pagan worship, like stone circles and like Celtic, like druidry and all that stuff. And they have formed an alliance with Mother Nature to take the planet back and save it from annihilation, so that they kind of, remind people of that the world, we were created. Let's see, how do I put it in my thing? The world wasn't created for us, but rather we are a part of the world that was created. And I think that, that's at the essence of it. But it's a story. It's going to become a story of a child.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's a 123-year period of time, and I'm just telling the first 35 years in this book.
Oh, wow.
What century is it started?
It starts in the year 2000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's funny because the first part of it, the first 16 or 17 years, are now 20, but really when I finished writing it, I was writing, about things that were behind me.
Yep.
And then I had to write about my imagined future, how I thought things were going to go. And that's been really interesting. And it's amazing how timely what's going on right now is related to what I talk about in the book. It's very fun. I mean, not funny, but it's interesting. But yeah, so it's cool. Thank you. Beyond the Stones.
Yes.
Beyond the Stones, The Promise of Beatrice. Amazon, probably June 1st.
That's amazing.
So I got a question that popped up here, asking if you speak Italian.
I do not. I studied. I did enough to get by, and the people that I was with, both the three of them spoke English. But it was really funny when the four of us were together. I would make them speak Italian, and although I couldn't necessarily participate in the conversations because my Italian is not, I was able to understand a lot of what they were saying. So yes, I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to go back there. There's a level of kindness and acceptance in the Italian people, and a pace of life. And I mean, I'm way outside the city here. You know what I mean? There were 137 people that live in this village. There's a pace that is just so comforting. And you can just sit there sometimes. I would just stare out at the sheep for 30 minutes and then think, God, what am I doing? And it was like, I'm just being. I'm like the tree over here and the squash. I'm just being. And what's wrong with that? Everything in nature, everything around me, except for human beings, allows themselves and spends most of their time just being. And so yeah, it was fabulous. I love Italy. Love Italy. So yeah.
Yeah, I need to get out to Italy at some point. I've never been. Is there anything that you can like pick out from your trips to Italy that was like your favorite thing, or is that
aside from being there and living that life? Do you know? I mean, I would walk to the next village because the village I lived in had no store, no nothing, and I would walk over the hillside to the next village, and I mean, I was in the middle of nowhere. It was really remarkable. But I would go and get my my groceries. You'd walk in and they'd have baskets on the wall where there were maybe like 2 onions or 3 eggplants. And basically it was what people had extra in their garden that they brought to the store. I mean, it was that remote and that small.
Wow.
But everybody within the first like 5 days, they all knew I was there. They all knew where I was because they gossiped, because I stood out, because this was not a place where tourists would go. And people were very kind and would talk to me in their broken English and ask me to speak English with them if, because they wanted to get better. So that was, but Florence, in terms of sights, I mean, it just took my breath away. It really did. It took my breath away. I mean, what the Italians did during the Renaissance, just what they did. And the fact that so much of the buildings is there for you to like touch and think, man, this has been here for 500 years or whatever. There's an energy in that that's really just wonderful. And Rome, I liked. I've been to Rome maybe at this point like 5 times. And that's not to say, oh, I've been there 5 times. It's not as clean. I don't know. Florence is stunning. I would say if there's only one place you can go to Florence and stay for like a week. I know a lot of people will go like Venice for 2 days, Rome for 2 days, Florence for 2 days. And you get a sense and you see the sights, but being in that city, you really kind of get a feel for the Florentinians, I guess they're called. It's a beautiful place. So that's where you should go, Matthew.
That's quite a tip. And I'll get to Europe at some point. We were actually had plans of maybe getting to Europe this summer, but I don't think that's definitely not going to happen.
Well, so there'll be other summers.
Yeah. So, I had an idea in my head of going to Edinburgh next summer because it's going to be the 10-year anniversary of our trip.
Oh my gosh! You know what? And I'm going to be there.
Really?
I'm going to. Well, I'm not going to go during August though, because it's crazy. I'm going to redo the trip that I was going to do this spring or summer, early summer. I'm going to do the same thing, and most of the time I'd be spending out in the Outer Hebrides. But this woman I'm traveling with, basically, I said, we're not going without going to Edinburgh, and she's been there once, like in a flyby situation. I said, it's just such a fabulous city, and it's so walkable. I mean, that's the thing. You don't need to take a cab anywhere. I mean, you walk, but you end up walking 6 miles a day, 7 miles a day. And the Scots also are incredibly embracing and welcoming, far more so than Londoners, England.
Yep.
I went to school there. I mean, they're fine, but they're not necessarily warm and fuzzy. Whereas the Scottish are very embracing people. At least that's what I've experienced. So.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. And I would love to keep talking about that, but we are actually out of time now. So
you're thinking of me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. This was great.
Okay. All right. Enjoy your afternoon. And I hope to see you soon.
You too, Valerie.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Valerie. You're awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
Yep.
And just real quick, I want to say thank you for everyone tuning into the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. The hour flew by as always, and we will see everyone again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.